Imagine a cattle breed so dominant it built the American beef industry, then vanished from sale barns almost overnight. Registrations once soared. Now only a quarter remain. The shocking part is this: Herefords were not genetically outclassed. They lost to a marketing masterstroke and to a radical change in what beef buyers wanted. How did this legendary breed fall so far, so fast, and what did we really lose? If you love Herefords, remember to like and subscribe. To understand what happened next, you have to go back to their very beginning. In 1742, a farmer named Benjamin Tompkins began shaping a breed that would change the course of beef production. Working the pastures of Herefordshire, England, Tompkins set out with a simple goal: create cattle that could thrive on grass alone, withstand the unpredictable British weather, and mature quickly enough to provide meat for a growing nation. He started with a bull calf from a cow called Mewar, and 2 cows named Pigeon and Mottle, founding animals whose descendants would become the backbone of the Hereford breed. Tompkins focused on 3 traits above all else. First, grass-to-beef conversion. His cattle had to turn rough pasture into rich, red meat with minimal extra feed. Second, hardiness. These animals needed to survive cold, wet winters and poor forage, keeping condition when others failed. And third, early maturity. Tompkins wanted cattle that reached market weight quickly, so families could depend on a steady supply of beef. No herd books from Tompkins survive, but breed historians and the American Hereford Association point to his careful selection for compact, deep-bodied stock. This focus on efficiency set Herefords apart from larger, slower-maturing breeds. The foundation Tompkins laid would echo across continents, shaping the choices of ranchers for centuries to come. In 1839, a Hereford bull named Cotmore stood as a living spectacle, weighing an astonishing 3,900 pounds. Cotmore drew crowds and headlines across England. Farmers and townsfolk gathered at fairs just to see the animal that, by all accounts, seemed almost mythical in size. Early Hereford breeders chased this kind of mass not just for beef, but for bragging rights and draft power. Bulls like Cotmore were the pride of their county, proof that a breeder's careful selection could create something truly extraordinary. But this obsession with size came at a cost. As the breed grew heavier, so did their appetites and maintenance needs. Feeding a giant like Cotmore required more pasture and more hands, straining the resources of even the wealthiest landowners. Over time, practical minds began to question whether sheer bulk made sense for everyday farming. The focus gradually shifted from producing the largest animal to finding the most efficient one. Cattle that could thrive on rough grass, mature quickly, and still provide plenty of beef. Cotmore's legacy lingered, but the breed's future would belong to those who valued balance over spectacle. After the Civil War, the open ranges of the American West became a testing ground for survival. Texas Longhorns, tough but lean, roamed in massive herds, but their meat was stringy and their trail losses were high. Enter the Hereford, imported in growing numbers through the 1880s, prized for turning coarse grass into real beef. Ranchers across Texas, Nebraska, and the Dakotas took notice. Cattle drives that once lost a quarter of their herds to exhaustion or disease saw those numbers drop when Hereford bulls were brought into the mix. The result was a new kind of cow, one that put on weight quickly, finished well on grass, and fetched a better price at the railhead. Ledgers from the era tell the story in numbers. Hereford cross calves gained faster, survived harsh winters, and arrived at markets heavier than their Longhorn cousins. By the turn of the century, Herefords had replaced Longhorns as the backbone of Western ranching. Sale barns filled with red and white cattle, and the Hereford became a symbol of prosperity on the range. For the ranching community, these cattle were more than livestock. They were the foundation of a way of life, shaping not just the economics, but the very culture of the American West. By the early 1970s, the economics of beef production began to unravel in ways few ranchers could have predicted. For decades, fat had been a hidden asset on every carcass. Packers rendered beef tallow into soaps, candles, and animal feed, and the value of that byproduct helped offset the cost of raising heavier, well-marbled cattle. Herefords, with their deep bodies and ability to finish with extra cover, fit the bill perfectly. But the market for tallow was about to collapse. A combination of new technology and changing tastes hit the industry hard. Synthetic detergents and vegetable oils, cheaper, easier to produce, and free of animal byproducts, flooded the market. At the same time, scientists and public health officials began warning about saturated fat. In 1980, the first dietary guidelines for Americans warned against animal fats, and headlines across the country echoed the message. Suddenly, the very trait that had made Herefords valuable became a liability. The numbers tell the story. In 1970, tallow brought in about 11 cents per pound. By 1980, the price had barely kept pace with inflation, and its real value had dropped by more than half. Packers, squeezed by falling tallow prices and rising disposal costs, started discounting cattle that carried too much fat. The USDA yield grading system, once a technicality, became a financial hammer. Carcasses with excess fat were docked heavily, sometimes losing $20, $30, or even $40 per hundredweight compared to leaner animals. For a steer that weighed 1,200 pounds, that could mean a loss of over $100 at the sale barn, enough to wipe out a rancher's profit for the season. Herefords, bred for generations to finish early and finish fat, found themselves on the wrong side of the new equation. Feedlots and packers began to look for cattle that could put on muscle without the extra waste. Ranchers watched as their once reliable Hereford calves brought lower bids at auction, and the economic pressure mounted. The fat that had once been a source of pride now weighed down the bottom line, setting the stage for a dramatic change in the American beef business. In 1978, a group of Angus breeders gathered around a simple but radical idea. If consumers could not count on a great steak, maybe a brand could guarantee it. Certified Angus beef, known as KAB, was born that year, not in a boardroom, but out of mounting frustration over tough, inconsistent beef. The program's founders, including Harold Ettling and Fred Johnson, set out to build a brand with strict standards. Only cattle with the right marbling, tenderness, and crucially, a black hide would wear the cab label. Mick Colvin was tapped as executive director and became the engine behind the operation, coordinating with everyone from breeders to packers to the USDA. The first pound of certified Angus beef sold at Renzetti's IGA in Columbus, Ohio, in October 1978. What started as a niche experiment soon caught the attention of feedlots and retailers. The rules were clear: only cattle meeting all 10 specifications, including the black hide, would qualify. That detail, black hide, would soon ripple through the entire industry. Feedlots, seeing a chance to earn premiums on KAB-eligible cattle, began offering higher bids for black calves. The price spread between black and red calves, once negligible, started to widen. By 1983, major packers like National Beef were licensing the brand, and distributors across the Northeast were stocking KAB beef. The program's not-for-profit structure meant every dollar earned was reinvested in marketing and quality control, building trust with both consumers and ranchers. As the premiums grew, so did the pressure on ranchers. Sale barn receipts from the early 1980s show the difference. Calves with black hides consistently brought more per pound than their Hereford counterparts. Livestock economists tracked the numbers as Hereford registrations, once the industry standard, began to slide, dropping to a quarter of their peak by the late 1990s. For many ranchers, the math was simple. Angus bulls produced black calves, and black calves paid better. Even those loyal to Herefords faced a hard choice: stick with tradition and take the discount, or switch bulls and chase the premium. The cab brand had turned a genetic trait into a market advantage, creating a feedback loop that would reshape the American beef herd for decades. Ranchers, always practical, started looking for ways to keep their operations afloat as the market punished anything with too much fat or the wrong color hide. The answer came from an unlikely place: crossing their Hereford cows with Angus bulls. The result was the black baldy, a calf with a white face, black body, and a genetic jackpot of traits. These calves inherited the Herefords' legendary hardiness and mothering ability, and they also sported the black hide that feedlots and packers now paid a premium for. The appeal was obvious. Black baldies grew fast, handled tough range conditions, and fetched higher prices at sale barns because they qualified for the same market premiums as purebred Angus. Heterosis, sometimes called hybrid vigor, gave these crossbred calves better health and improved weaning weights. Ranchers did not have to choose between tradition and profit. They could get both in a single animal. Sale records from the 1980s and the 1990s show black baldy calves consistently topping the market, sometimes outpacing both parent breeds. But this practical solution came with a hidden cost. With every Angus bull turned out on Hereford cows, the number of purebred Hereford calves dropped. Registrations, once the pride of the industry, fell to a quarter of their 1970s peak by the late 1990s. The breed's best traits, fertility, longevity, and resilience, lived on in these crosses, but the Hereford name faded from sale barn receipts and pedigree books. Ranchers got what they needed: a calf that thrived on grass, survived the winter, and brought top dollar at auction. The irony was impossible to miss. The black baldy kept Hereford genetics alive in the nation's cow herds, but it did so at the expense of the purebred Hereford itself. For producers, the decision was never about loyalty or nostalgia. It was about staying in business. The black baldy offered a way to ride out the changes in the beef market, a pragmatic compromise that worked for the bottom line, even as it quietly rewrote the story of America's most famous cattle breed. On a windswept ranch in the Nebraska Sandhills, a herd of Hereford cows grazes under the watchful eye of the Thompson family. 3 generations have worked this land, and lately their herd records are drawing attention for reasons that would have surprised their grandparents. The average age of their cows now hovers near 9 years, well above the industry norm. Most commercial herds cycle cows out by 6 or 7, but the Thompsons have cows raising healthy calves at 10, even 12 years old. Each year, the replacement rate drops, saving thousands in heifer costs and reducing the stress of constant turnover. This is not nostalgia at work. It is a business decision backed by numbers. The American Hereford Association tracks longevity in herds across the country, and the pattern repeats. Hereford-influenced cows stay productive longer, breed back reliably, and nurse calves through harsh winters. In an era of tight margins and unpredictable weather, those extra years matter. Ranchers who once switched to Angus for market premiums are quietly buying Hereford bulls again, aiming to build herds that last. The trend shows up in sale barn receipts and age distribution charts, proof that longevity is more than a pedigree claim. For families like the Thompsons, the Hereford revival is not about reclaiming lost glory. It is about finding an edge that pays off, one calving season at a time. Across the beef industry, conversations about sustainability have become as common as talk of market prices. Hereford cattle, shaped for centuries to thrive on grass and limited inputs, now find themselves part of that debate. Animal geneticists point to the breed's foundation: efficient grass-to-beef conversion, a trait hardwired by early breeders like Tompkins and still evident in modern herds. This efficiency is not just about saving feed, it is about reducing the resources needed for every pound of beef produced. As grain prices climb and carbon footprints draw scrutiny, Herefords offer a comparative advantage in low-input systems. Feed efficiency studies, though often limited in scope, suggest that Herefords can maintain weight and reproductive performance on rough forage, where other breeds might require costly supplements. In practical terms, this means fewer truckloads of grain crossing the prairie and less fossil fuel burned to support the herd. When it comes to emissions, the science is still catching up. Some studies hint that efficient grass converters like Herefords may produce less methane per pound of finished beef, especially in extensive grazing systems. But experts caution against blanket claims. Differences between breeds are often smaller than the impact of management, nutrition, and environment. What is clear is that as ranchers look for ways to balance profit with stewardship, the old Hereford focus on doing more with less is earning a second look. Genetic diversity, once a byproduct of tradition, is now seen as an asset for navigating the pressures of a changing climate and economy. Across the world, the story of Herefords stands out for one simple reason: survival. Since the dawn of modern cattle breeding, more than 184 distinct breeds have vanished forever, lost to disease, changing markets, or the relentless push for uniformity. The Food and Agriculture Organization tracks these losses, each one erasing a chapter of agricultural history and narrowing the genetic options for future generations. Herefords, once so dominant they seemed unshakable, came close to joining that list. Their numbers plummeted as ranchers chased calves with black hides and market premiums, while other heritage breeds faded quietly into extinction. What kept Herefords from disappearing was not luck. Breed associations, working with ranchers and geneticists, made deliberate choices to preserve diversity. They tracked bloodlines, maintained wide genetic pools, and prioritized traits that went beyond short-term profit. Conservationists sounded alarms when registrations dropped, pushing for performance testing and broader selection instead of a rush to the latest trend. Today, every Hereford calf born is part of a living legacy, a reminder that once a breed is gone, it is gone for good. In the face of global loss, the Hereford's continued presence is not just a matter of tradition, but a safeguard for the future of beef production. Today, as beef producers confront rising feed costs and climate pressure, Hereford genetics are quietly regaining ground in commercial herds. Their unmatched grass efficiency and resilience are no longer just history. They are strategic assets for a changing industry. In an era where marketing once decided a breed's fate, nature's advantages refuse to be sidelined. The future of beef may look different, but it just might wear a white face again.